Hello there everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you all very much for joining me today, and we've just had once again the community stream from Square Enix regarding all the things that are going to be coming out for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia in the month of August. And it's a pretty big one. I mean, a lot of people who followed my channel for a while, or followed pretty much any other content creator for Opera Omnia, or followed the Japanese version of the game, has known for a while that we were expecting burst weapons and LD or limited weapons to be coming up in the near future. Well, that future is now very near, being Thursday, as the dawn of a new power creep when it comes to Opera Omnia. So if you guys want to find out more about that, if you want to find out more about which characters are coming up with that stuff, all the other quality of life stuff that we're going to be getting, then of course stay tuned and keep on watching. Don't forget to check out, as always, all of my social media links in the description box below, including my Twitter, Twitch, Discord and Patreon. Twitch this week I will be streaming on Thursday in order to welcome in the new burst era for Dissidia Opera Omnia, as well as playing some Final Fantasy IX and some Final Fantasy XIV over this weekend. I have now decided that offline mode is now no longer going to be a thing. I think we've now definitely established that you can play Opera Omnia without pulling for a very long time and actually be able to get pretty far on it, but it's gotten to a point now where it's getting a little bit tedious and boring for me to play it. It's getting a little bit boring for people watching it, because now it's just a case of, okay, well now he's going through the story and using the same three characters all the time. So while it's been fun and it's been really good as an experiment to learn about what it feels like to be a new player at this point in time for Opera Omnia, I think it's had its day in the sun, and now is the time where I want to experiment at doing different things as a content creator. So at the moment I'm going to stick within the realm of Final Fantasy and go with 9 and 14. So do be sure to come and check me out at the weekend if you want to come and see something a bit different. With Patreon, as always, I shout out one of my patrons at random every time I make a video to say thank you to each and every one of you individually, so that, for those of you who want to support the channel further, it means the absolute world to me. And today that person is going to be Red Cloud, who has been a follower of mine for quite a while now, so massive shout out to you. Don't forget to check out all of the websites that are involved with Opera Omnia, including Dissidia Info, Dissidia DB, Tombury Troop and OO Tracker, and then of course don't forget to check out all of the other content creators besides myself. Now, the first thing that was shown off on the community stream was in fact a video rather than a slide, which was the dawn of Squall's LD and burst attacks. Now, if you've seen these in various different videos and bits and pieces across the internet, you'll know that the LD is an additional ability on top of the ones you already have that's very powerful. You can't use any free skills or anything on it because it's really powerful. And then the burst is something that comes along for protagonists and antagonists of the series periodically in order to really elevate their power level and give them what is essentially a second summon, where you can use each of their abilities once and then they get a finishing burst at the end of it, which breaks the damage limit, does a massive attack, gives you effects at the end of it, and all sorts of other things. So as you can see on my right hand side here, these are the weapons that we are going to come to expect when it comes to Squall. So they are similar to EXs, but they're slightly different. You've probably seen other videos that explain exactly what these do, and I'm actually going to make a video that's going to both explain my pulling strategy when it comes to burst weapons, LDs, things like that, and it's also going to go into greater depth about what exactly they are. However, with the slides that we have here, you can see that an LD weapon is a new weapon that grants a brand new skill, and as I said earlier, it grants not very many uses of those skills, but they're exempt from free use effects. You can't gain skill uses for them, but they're very, very strong. You don't need ingots for these, just to clarify, and realistically with most characters the LD is actually weaker stat wise than an EX plus is. So don't go selling off your EX pluses, because you actually can now, and I'll get to that in a moment, because you are actually going to still use that as your main equipment. But LD weapons, a lot of them still have fairly nice skins, you can obviously change them in the skin menu if you wanted to, and realistically what you're going to do is grab the LD, max it out with power stones, because you only need to max out power stones, like I said, you don't need ingots or anything, and then you're probably just going to sell it back off again, because you don't actually want it for its stats. Then burst weapons are slightly different. Burst weapons you do want for their stats. They are stronger than EX pluses, but they're extremely rare, and they are I'll get to you're showing you the slide that explains how you pull for these, slightly differently, and like I said, they give 6 free consecutive turns, so basically a summon, with a use of every skill that that character has. So most players will tell you to go after an LD way before you go for a burst, and that is true to the most part. If you want an LD, that's the thing you really want. If you're going for a burst like for your favourite characters, or you think it's like super powerful or anything, then obviously going for that is fine, and having a completed kit is great. Having a character with their LD and not their burst is totally workable. Having a character with their burst and not their LD is not as good as it sounds. So do bear that in mind when you go into pulling, and like I said, I will go over this in a more in-depth look during another video that I will release this week. And then with the availability of the weapons, basically the LDs are restricted to the banners that they come on. Bursts, however, are not, because they are that much rarer, and I will show you the odds of pulling each of these in just a moment. But basically, the banners, like the way you're going to pull for these is going to be slightly different in my eyes. Like you can go all in and pull for a character's LD and their burst all at once if you wanted to. However, I think there is more optimal ways of doing that, because bursts are spread across multiple banners. Obviously, the G tokens and stuff, they're still restricted to one banner at a time, but you can get a burst weapon across multiple banners. So in using Squall as an example, his burst is available during his own banners, because there's actually 2 for him. The Lost Chapter for Garland, and then a Mid-Italians event, which I will get to as we progress through the slides. You can get Squall's burst during any of these banners, whereas the LD is restricted to the one or 2 banners, depending on which characters there are. So be very cautious on how you pull for things, because you don't want to end up with one and not the other. And well, you don't want to end up with a burst and not the LD. There are also alternative ways of getting bursts through tokens, things like that, that option is not available for LDs. So try to prioritize LDs over bursts and see them more as a luxury for the time being. Now, as you see through the slide that I've got here as well, the burst has the highest strength, then the AX plus does, then LD, then EX. So LDs are stronger than plain EXs, but your EX pluses that you've been accumulating over the course of the Chaos era, they're still going to be really useful. Like, you're not going to sell them off, you're not going to like try and get all your ingots back from them, because as I'll show you in a little while, you actually can do that. You're still going to want them equipped for your stats. When it comes to the draw rates, burst weapons, despite the fact that they're across multiple banners, the rate for them is now 0.1%. So that is 1 in 1,000 tickets that you're going to get a burst weapon. Now, I've seen, like, don't panic when it comes to these, because I've seen a lot of content creators who play the JP version actually obtain a rather large number of bursts relatively easily, because there are ways of gaining burst tokens. Certainly if you're willing to put money into the game, things like that, then it's easier to get them in some ways than some LDs. So don't panic, because you might get one of these without even expecting it. And then they've actually altered the rates as well. So LDs are exactly the same rates as what our EXs are now. So they're 0.5%, so that's 1 in roughly 200 tickets. And then EX weapons have had their rate increased to 0.75%. So that's roughly 1 in 120 tickets. So that's actually like improved our odds of getting stronger weapons in a lot of ways. And the best thing about this, in my opinion, is the fact that off-banner weapons, so you now cannot pull a damn Chocoblade when you're pulling for something on banner. It just cannot happen anymore. And not listed here as well, and it's interesting to see as well, because it wasn't mentioned in the stream, I don't believe, is that the actual, like, the way the orbs are presented is changed during pulls. So if you get a gold orb when it comes up on the screen, like, you know, you press the button, it comes up as gold, it's not blue, evolve to silver, evolve to gold, it will guarantee an EX or LD weapon now. And if it's got like lightning crackling around it, it's a burst weapon. So like, if you like, that's something that makes it quite exciting, but it's not like, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. So how you plan on like getting excited for pulls and stuff might change a little bit. And then, as I said, you can now sell EX pluses, because you couldn't until this point. So you get 5 nuggets back per ingot that you've put into that weapon. So you'll only, like, even with a maxed out purple EX plus, you're only going to get enough for 1 ingot back. So be careful when it comes to selling your stuff, because it looks like, oh good, I can sell these weapons and I can equip the LD. Actually not a very good idea. So do bear that in mind. One of the nicest things that I've seen come out of this stream is the additional summon points or wild points or enhancement points based on your player rank. So they are increasing it by 1% for every 20 ranks that you have. So at rank 800, you're getting 140% of the points you would have gotten normally. Now, this obviously is stacked with synergy, books, Mog Pass, which we'll get to in a moment. That's all really great, and it honestly will make your life so much easier when it comes to summon board farming. And then the daily missions, instead of having to do 5 a day, you actually only have to do 1 now. So that's actually a really nice little point to note as well. And then the Memoria Theatre, like if you actually want to watch all the cutscenes, you can actually just continuously watch everything, which is kind of nice. Like, as somebody who skips a lot of the cutscenes nowadays, because I know that like certain chapters have spoilers for certain games. Like, I haven't played Type 0, and I know the most recent story chapter spoils a lot of Type 0. I actually haven't watched a lot of the cutscenes recently, so at some point it might actually be quite nice just to sit and watch them all. So that's a nice little extra, but that is going to be like a rough overview of how bursts and LDs work. But I'm going to do, like I said, I'm going to do a much more in-depth look over the course of the week on how I plan on pulling for them, how I plan on like making sure that people don't sell their EX pluses unnecessarily. The only time you're really going to want to do that is if you have a burst weapon for that character. But pulling is going to be a little bit different now. Like I said, LDs have the same rates that EXs do now. So while it sounds terrifying that we've now got 2 new things that we have to pull for, bursts are like any new power creep in a gacha game. They are a luxury. They are not going to become mandatory for clearing content for a very long time to come. That being said, they are very nice to have even now. Like, Squall is considered one of the weaker burst characters for quite a long time, until he gets his rework in his LD board, which is coming way later, so don't even worry about that for the time being. But he's considered one of the weaker characters to begin with. But having a second summon is a thing, and the fact that you can break the damage limit and stuff like that, but there will always be more burst weapons, so don't panic if you don't get one immediately. It's not as egregious and end of the world as it sounds. It's fine to not have one. Aim for an LD first and then treat a burst as a luxury. The next thing that's going to be talked about is actually something that's quite a hot topic for a lot of players, and it's something that's quite exciting, is the Mog Pass. Now, this is something that is only going to excite players who are happy to spend money on the game, because it is something that, you know, you pay for and it increases your quality of life within the game itself. And there are 2 versions of this. The first one is listed at $4.99 US, and if you're in the UK, I'm fairly sure that this will end up being £4.99 despite the conversion rate. And basically what it does is you get a little bit of gems from it, it lasts for the whole month, and it doubles the limit of enhancement points or character board points that you can get from events. So instead of being only able to max out 1 character per event, you can now max out 2. And then you also earn 2.5 times, or 250%, or 150% more, so 250% total enhancement, like character board points and summon board points. So this is additive with the fact that we get the multiplier from our rank. It's additive with the fact that we get the multiplier from our books, from synergy. It makes summon board farming so much less painful. So if you're happy to spend a little bit of money on the game, this is a great way to do it, because honestly, summon board farming, like, oh my god, I'm over it. Like, I actually haven't done an awful lot of Alexander because I've been really naughty, but this actually does make things 10 times easier, certainly when the next Super Synergy event comes around. And then you have Mog Pass Premium as well, which everybody gets the first one for free, and it's an item that you use that lasts for the month, so you could save it if you wanted to, but if you plan on buying more Mog Passes, then I would suggest using it straight away. It's not got a price listed there, but it's roughly estimated to be about $36.99, which is quite expensive. But the edition that you get with a premium Moogle Pass over the regular one is you get more gems, so you get just under a pull's worth for whatever the price ends up being. But you also get EX power tokens and Moogle tokens, which can be exchanged in new shops that have now come about. So we all know what the EX shop has been like before, from like DE Pathos or anything, or DE Order, sorry, or anything like that, where you would exchange it for certain EXs. Well, these ones you can now exchange for any EX in the game. So you get 5 EX tokens, and it costs 10 for you to get any EX of your choice. And that's like, as soon as a character gets their EX released, it comes out on this shop. So anyone you want. So, but there are in-game methods of getting it. So the daily token foray, you can get EX tokens that way, but they're really expensive, and you're not going to be able to get anything else. So this is kind of more reserved for people who are happy to pay money into the game in order to get stuff. But if you are going to do that, I think it's a great way to like basically fill in the gaps in an even more efficient method than weapon tokens do now. So if you've got 10 EX tokens and you're pulling for a character's LD and you get the LD before the EX, you can just leave the banner. You could just go and get the EX. Or if there's a character like Alisaie or Gabranth, which are coming up in the near future, who are really good with just their EX, then you could just get them and not have to worry about that banner if you're not interested in anything else. You also get 2 Moogle medals, and the Moogle medals can be traded in for 10 burst power tokens. You could also trade them in for a Book of Ruins or Book of Refuge's Mysteries. Don't ever do that. It's never worth it. Unless you get the 1 premium Mog Pass and you never plan on doing it again, you could, but you can get burst tokens from playing the game as well. So honestly, I would just get burst power tokens with this and never anything else. And you can save up to 50 of those and you get a burst of your choice. So earlier when I was explaining about the fact that you can get bursts in alternate ways to just pulling them, but you can't with LDs, this is what I mean. There's no exchange shop for LDs, but there are for bursts and EXs. So try and bear that in mind when you're planning your pulls for the future, or at least within this era. So the first event that we're going to see that contains a burst and an LD weapon is going to be a new raid. So expect to see lots of people with showing off their Squall bursts and everything like that, because it's going to happen. But Squall's first 2 banners, so there's 2 banners that come with a character when their burst debuts, because only protagonists and antagonists get these, but 2 banners come about when they arrive. And the first one will usually contain that character's EX and 2 other EXs, and the other banner will usually contain just that character's LD and burst, and the other 3 will be other characters' EXs. So if you don't have Squall's EX already, for example, you're going to want to pull on a certain banner that has it. If you've already got it, then you have another option so that you can pull for other characters while you're trying to get Squall's LD or burst or whatever you're wanting to get. And the banners with this particular one, in JP, one of them had Tifa and Kate Sith and Gilgamesh, and the other one had Auron and Steiner on it. So you can kind of choose a banner that you want to pull on first before you decide to pull on Squall, like particular banner, or if you're needing anything that will fulfill the Chaos Challenges, which is another slide that was brought up. The Chaos Challenges are something that you unlock after you finish the main Chaos of any event, and it unlocks a challenge quest. The challenge quest is the same thing, it's the same fight, but you're only allowed to bring synergy characters and you can't use a friend unit. And with this particular challenge, the fact that there's only 1 support character across both banners makes this difficult. Like, the fact that Kate Sith is the only one, I'm wondering, I'd love to see people clear it without Squall's burst or Kate Sith, because you could use Alexander for healing and things like that, but I'd be curious to see what people use to clear this, because when you finish a Chaos Challenge and you perfect it, so that's get the score, get the no HP drop, anything like that, you earn a burst token. Now this doesn't sound like much, 1 burst token, you're like, oh really, is that all you get? But that adds up. Bear in mind that we get 2 events a week minimum. That adds up pretty quickly. So if you're able to clear these, then go ahead and do so. I wouldn't go out of my way to pull just to be able to clear a Chaos Challenge, but it's something I'm actually really looking forward to Chaos Challenges, purely because I like the challenge of using characters in an unorthodox way, using teams that I wouldn't normally, and the fact that the game is encouraging that, I find really quite exciting. I think a lot of people will probably be upset by it, because they'll think, oh, I have to pull in order to finish this, but it's if you don't finish it, it's actually okay. Wait for the next one. The fact that we get 1 burst token from this, it's one of those things where if you're getting them all, then great, you're going to accumulate those burst tokens and get whatever burst you need much quicker. But if you only miss 1 of them, it's not the end of the world. And if you're not buying, if you are buying premium Mog Pass, obviously you're going to get there that much quicker. But the fact of the matter is that eventually you're going to be able to accumulate enough to buy a burst of your choice. So if you get an LD and not a burst, it's okay to leave that banner, because you could always come back to it if it's a favourite character or anything like that if you really wanted to. So I actually find the Chaos Challenges to be really quite exciting, and they're really fun to be able to do something different, and if it gives you a reason to pull on things or to look out for alternate characters with just their EXs and use things that maybe you didn't expect. So after the raid, we're going to get obviously a Lost Chapter, and we're going to get a character event. The Lost Chapter belongs to Garland, and he's going to be getting his LD weapon. He doesn't get a burst yet. Like, even though he's the antagonist of FF1, it's going to be well, I don't think even in JP he has his burst even announced just yet, so it's going to be a while before we get that. But his LD is actually pretty interesting. It makes it so that he has like a speed down aura similar to Sephiroth, and he also gets to be able to use free skill uses, which is probably one of Garland's biggest restrictions up until this point, is that he like runs through his skills like nothing. He also gets a real HP attack plus, like one that's not one hit brave HP and that's it. He actually gets quite a significant overhaul with his LD, because you'll find that a lot of LDs actually enhance more than just the LD itself, similar to how EX pluses work. So do bear that in mind when you're looking at LDs. And then the character event, there is a mid-Italian who is from Crystal Chronicles Crystal Bearers, so the same game that Lael comes from, and she is a very unique character. She's very interesting. Now, her main draw for a lot of players is using her as a friend unit. The main reason for this is because her LD skill erases turns. Like, oh, sorry, a skill 2, I think, actually. It erases turns entirely. No delay, it just takes them away. Like, they don't get it. Like, so if you just continuously use that, then you're taking away your enemy's turns. If you're using that in combination with a delay character, it's going to be forever until they get their next turn. So she is actually a character that a lot of people are excited for, and a lot of players who are after Squall's burst. And I'll quickly go over it now, like as opposed to the in-depth thing that I'll talk about later in the week. My plan, if I wanted Squall's burst, I'm not particularly fussed about it, but I would like it if it came along to me, I'd be happy about it, is I would pull on a mid-Italian's banner first, and if I got Squall's burst, I would then go back to his banner while it was still live and try and get the LD. Or if I wanted the LD, I would go in on Squall's banner, get the LD, stop. If I wanted a mid-Italian, wait for her banner to turn up, try and pull for her LD. If I get Squall's burst then, fantastic. If I don't, if I get a mid-Italian's LD first, then I would kind of suss up my options at that point. Do I have enough resources to pull for the next thing that I really want? If not, then I'll probably wait and I'll try and see if either the burst weapon comes back on a banner, because in JP they have had it as where weapons come back, same as EXs do for us up until this point. Or I would go back to one of the banners, whichever one I either had the least EXs on, so if I needed more stuff to complete a Chaos Challenge, or if I've got more G tokens if I've spent gems on either one of those banners, in the horrible eventuality that we're going to have to pity a burst, because pitying an LD costs the same as pitying an EX does now. Pitying a burst costs 125,000 gems, which is not cheap. So just, you've got to kind of like change the way you look at pulling ever so slightly. It's not like, there's no fixed rules to it, but like with anything I do when it comes to my videos, if I can only try and give advice on how I would do things. But I think a lot of players are going to have slightly different pulling strategies now, because of the way that pulling for EX, LD, and in certain cases bursts as well, will change the game up slightly. Now, Dimensions End 14 is released on August 12th. Now, Dimensions End 14 is resistant to range, so you're going to want to bring melee or magic-based attackers, and I can tell you the team that I'm planning on using for this in just a moment. And it also, they use elemental resistances, so if you've got an Imperialer, it's going to make your life so much easier. I fully plan to bring Garnet along, and then you just want to make sure that you've got like poison or any kind of draining bravery abilities, because the enemies like to just make sure that they've got bravery like just increasing all the time, and they're very fast. So if you've got characters that are equally fast or able to reduce their speed like Quistis, then you're going to want to use characters like that. And similarly, on the same day as DE14 comes along, new Burst and LD banners. Now in JP, these banners were Shantotto's. Now I imagine the reason that they didn't show Shantotto off here is because they want it to be like a big reveal or something like that, because otherwise they would have shown her there. And I can't imagine that they're going to like spring something completely different on us instead of Shantotto. But honestly, the most exciting thing about the banner that comes along with Shantotto for me is Alisaie. Now, Alisaie is the one character in this game that I reckon I regret not pulling for most, because she's such an interesting character, and she's a red mage, and I was a red mage main for years in FF14, well, since Stormblood came out. But Alisaie's rework actually makes her really fast, really powerful. She imperils everything that she does. She's super turn efficient, and she's really representative of how a red mage works in FF14. So for me, she's a must-have character. And in the era of LD and burst characters, at least in the initial stages, much like we had 35 CP legends back when EXs was becoming a thing, we've kind of got EX-only legends in this era. And Alisaie is one of those characters, as is Gabran slightly later on. She only has an EX. But her EX Plus is so good that she can still fit into a team despite the fact that LDs are running around. And honestly, she's just a really great character, and I heavily encourage people to try and pick her up. I've actually considered, if I were to pick up the premium Mog Pass, just picking up her EX from that shop and then not worrying about the banner at all. And then after Alisaie comes along, we're also going to have Ultimecia's LD, and we're also going to have Desh turn up. Like, all characters that turn up now, all new characters will have their EX and their LD turn up at the same time, and all Lost Chapter characters will have LDs come along as well. And then the burst character that's going to be featured in these will also be Shantotto. A lot of players, I think, are going to plan to pull for Ultimecia now, because they want to be able to pull on a different banner when her burst does come out, because that is out in JP, and it's also quite strong, but she doesn't feature the other characters' LDs on the same banner as the one that features her own. So when she's released, her LD and burst banner is on one banner, and then Penello's LD and Ultimecia's burst is on the other. So by pulling for Ultimecia's LD now, you don't have to look at the banner that has her LD on it. You can just ignore it and go for the one that has Penello's LD, because you might still get Ultimecia's burst from that. So I know it sounds complicated, because there's a lot of different sort of strategies that come to pulling now that weren't there before, and I hope that I explain this as well as I can, but without examples in front of me, it does make it a little harder. And then Desh coming around is also a very interesting character. He's actually quite undervalued, I feel, in a lot of the JP clears, but he has a lot of like thunder-based stuff, and he actually like lays an electric field that has a high chance of paralyzing enemies after their turn. I think the reason that people aren't so keen on him is because there's a little bit of RNG evolved in some of his stuff, like the electric field doesn't always paralyze like Raijin does. But I think that he's actually a very interesting character, so he might be one to look out for the future as well. So that's going to be it for today's video. I know there's a lot of information to take in all at once, with BT and LD and every abbreviation under the sun, and all the Mog Passes, all the quality of life updates that we've got. There's a lot to take in, and as I said, I will go and make a video specifically about pulling strategies for bursts, pulling strategies for LDs, like how you can kind of like optimize, at least in my opinion, the way that you can pull for these things, and also just managing your characters through this era. And then obviously I will be making a should you pull video for Squall and all of the stuff that comes with him in the near future as well. So that's going to be it from me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it out, and of course ring that bell for notifications for any future videos I might be making. And feel free to come and join me on Thursday if you'd like to see me mildly attempt to try and pull Squall stuff on Thursday, because it would be very exciting to get the first burst, even if he is a little bit lackluster in comparison to other characters. But hopefully I shall see you then. Thank you very much once again, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.